Welcome to this episode of Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players in the NFL. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and we are looking at the pregame for Week 3, as well as a take on the game last night, the Thursday night game between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. I do want to say that I'll cover every game, the rest of the 1 o'clock games that I didn't cover yesterday, as well as the 4 o'clock games, Sunday night game, and the Monday night game. I'll cover all those today, and then we'll look at them on Monday, see how the teams did. Got some good games coming up, a couple of games between undefeated teams, and also a game between two teams that have not won a game. So that'll be a game to watch since one of those teams is Kansas City. I also want to mention that I changed the format. Yesterday I tried to do, for the pregame, I was doing the fantasy aspect of the everything at the end, looking at it overall by position, quarterback, and so forth. But I didn't like it. The previous week I had done it. Each game I was just picking out the fantasy players for each game. I think I'm going to go back to that, at least right now. And I can talk about the game a little bit more in that aspect. So I'll go back to that, see how I like it, and whether I change it back or something, I don't know. We'll see. So we are ready to go with this episode of Just the Stats NFL. We'll start with the Thursday night game between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. It was in Buffalo. Buffalo was favored by 11.5, and they did not cover. They did win 31-21. And Miami, again, played them tough. 2 critical mistakes in the game, and unbelievably critical mistakes, cost them the game. And it was only really those 2 mistakes. They played a fairly good game the entire way, were able to hang in there with Buffalo, and it was tied 21-21. The Miami Dolphins had stopped Buffalo Bills, forced a punt, and on the punt, just a stupid mistake. The defender came across over the center, ran into the kicker, gave the Bills a first down, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. The Bills did. It was such a bad mistake because they had stopped the Bills, and they have had a tough time stopping them. So they could have had a chance to go take the lead. So then toward the end of the game, as they're going down, they're losing by 7. They're beginning to move into touchdown range with just a little over 2 minutes to go. And Tua throws an interception. And that's the game, basically. And then Buffalo tacked on a field goal to make it a 10-point difference. But this game was close the entire game. Dolphins fought, and this was in Buffalo, so they fought against the Bills and did a good job. Their numbers don't really look like it, but this game was a very slow-moving game. I mean, in the first half, I think the Bills had like 3 possessions. So this game, it's just the way it plodded along in a way, but which worked to Miami's advantage to try to stick in this game, and they did. But they ended up losing anyway. You cannot make mistakes when you're playing against the team that's honestly better than you are. You can't make these critical mistakes. Buffalo didn't make the same mistakes. They won the game. You know, if you're looking for help that way, Buffalo did not succumb to any kind of turnovers. So it was a rough game for them. I mean, for Dolphins. So let's look at the numbers here. Looking at before I get into the game numbers, we're going to look at the top 10s for this game. As far as the Miami Dolphins go, top 10 wide receivers in receptions. Tyreek Hill is 9th. He was trying to he needed 9 to catch Devontae Parker for 8th all time. He was able to get 5 receptions, so he now has 334 receptions. Devontae Parker has 338 for 8th place. So next week, probably Tyreek Hill will move into 8th place all time for the Miami Dolphins. In 8th place seems a ways from number 1, but number 1 is Mark Clayton with 550. So Tyreek Hill will be passing several players as he moves up and fairly quickly. And the same goes with Jalen Waddle. Going into the game, Jalen Waddle was 11th, trying to get into the top 10. He was only 3 receptions behind Devon Bess for 10th, and he was able to get 5 receptions. Now he has 323 receptions, so he moved into 10th place over Devon Bess, who had 321. So now next up for Jalen Waddle is Tyreek Hill. The two of them are number 9 and number 10 right now for the Miami Dolphins. So they'll be fighting it out to see who can move up this list quicker. And looking at the same thing, when we're looking at receiving yards, Mark Duper's number 1 all time with 8,869. But Tyreek Hill, well, he needed 110 yards in this game. He only was able to get 49. He was 8th right now. He's also trying to catch Devontae Parker in this category. So he now has 4,666. So he's still 61 yards behind Devontae Parker. So maybe he gets him next week. Now, Jalen Waddle was 10th. He needed only 16 yards to tie Brian Hartline for 9th. He was able to actually get 39 yards. So now Jalen Waddle is 9th all time for the Miami Dolphins in yards with 4,266. So next up for him is actually Tyreek Hill. So the two of them kind of going side by side in receptions and in yards, and soon they will be approaching the top 10 as far as touchdowns go as well. Now, the only number here for Buffalo is Josh Allen as he continues to move up in various categories. This is a NFL record that we're looking at here. Right now, going into the game, Josh Allen was 7th all-time in the NFL in rushing yards. And he only needed 9 yards to pass Steve Young for 6th all-time in the NFL as far as quarterbacks rushing. He got 25 yards, so he now has 4,256 to move into 6th place all-time in the rushing yards. Lamar Jackson leads this category by pretty handily with 6,256 yards. But Josh Allen is now 6th all-time. And he's got a ways to go to catch 5th, which is Randall Cunningham. He needs 700 yards almost. So he probably won't catch Randall Cunningham this year. It's unlikely. But definitely next year, I would assume he catches him. So those are the top 10s for this game. Now, looking at the numbers in this game, like I said, the stats were not that impressive, but Buffalo did what they needed to do to win this game. As far as the quarterbacks go, Tua Tagovailoa was 22 receptions on 34 attempts, 22 completions on 34 attempts for only 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 critical mistake toward the end of the game. He had been playing fairly well, didn't get sacked, got out of all the sacks, really was playing a decent game until that huge mistake just cost him one of the 2 things that cost them the game. Again, it was mostly dump offs, no passes that were too far down the field. He did attempt a long pass to Hill, not completed, but everything was short, but it worked to a degree, kept the game moving, kept them getting first downs and so forth. Now for Buffalo, Josh Allen was 22 completions on 28 attempts for 213 yards, but he threw 3 touchdowns. He was sacked twice, so he was very efficient with his passing game. Not that many yards either, but like I said, enough. And so many key first down passes for him when he needed it. Now, in the rushing department for Miami, Devon Achane had 12 carries for 62 yards. Not too bad. And then Ollie Gordon had 9 carries for 38 yards, and he had a touchdown. He had a really good run when they needed a first down as well. So he had a pretty decent game. Between the two of them, they had 100 yards between the two of them. The team as a total had 25 carries for 130 yards, so they ran pretty well against the Buffalo defense. Now for Buffalo, it was James Cook, 19 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. Really good game for him. Josh Allen had 4 carries for 25 yards. Those are your top 2. Elijah Moore had only 1 carry for 11 yards, but it was a key first down carry for them. A lot of plays like that were critical at the time. They needed both teams, big third down efficiency for a lot of them. Now, in the receiving game, Tyreek Hill, 5 catches on 10 targets. So he was targeted the most, and he had 5 catches for 49 yards and a touchdown. But his longest reception was only 19 yards. No, that was the longest reception by a Miami receiver. They couldn't get the ball down the field too far. And that's just the way they've been having to play lately. Now, Jalen Waddle also had 5 catches on 6 targets, 5 catches, 39 yards, and he had a touchdown. So they both had very good games in a sense. In this game against Buffalo, they came up when they needed to come up with big plays. So they played well. Miami now, just like last week, they're trying to beat Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another good team that they came very close to winning that game as well. And Achane steps out of bounds when they're going into, would have taken the lead in the game, and he steps out by just inches late in the game. And it was one of the critical mistakes. Again, not a mistake so much, but just a critical event in the game that cost Miami the game, one of them anyway. Now, Devon Achane had 7 catches for 29 yards on 9 attempts. So he was the second leading receiver as far as targets go coming out of the backfield there. Those are your top 3 receivers. Now for Buffalo, Dalton Kincaid did have another good game, so we'll have to watch him. 5 catches, 6 on 6 targets, and he was targeted the most with only 6 targets. No one else had more than 4. This is the way Buffalo's been doing it, spreading the ball around, which is why I'm not really that interested in any of their receivers. Even Dalton Kincaid as the tight end, he would probably be the only offensive player other than Josh Allen and James Cook that I'd be interested in. But he had 5 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. Now, Khalil Shakir, who had kind of been absent in a way, hadn't seen much of him, but he had 4 catches for 45 yards, 1 touchdown, and that was on 4 targets. So he had his best game this year. Now, Keon Coleman, who had the big game week 1, not much here. 3 catches, 20 yards on 4 targets. So again, if you were looking at Coleman as maybe the bust-out player, it didn't pan out. James Cook out of the backfield had 3 receptions for 10 yards on 3 targets. So James Cook handled the ball 22 times in this game. Definitely the offensive player that you might want to pick up. And again, he had the touchdown as well. So he continues that finding the end zone. So those are your offensive players. Now looking at the defense for Miami, Tyrell Dotson had a total of 11 tackles. 11. And they were all solo tackles. Amazing. He had a sack as well and a tackle for loss. So he had a huge game. I mean, just huge. He really was able to get to and pressure Allen in this game and sacked him 1 time. Definitely the number 1 player for them in this game. Now, Bradley Chubb also had a sack and a tackle for loss as well. So he had a decent game, but he only had 3 total tackles. Now looking at Buffalo's defense, Teron Johnson had 8 total tackles. 6 of them were solo, and he had a tackle for loss as well. Terrell Bernard had 7 tackles, 5 of them solo, and a tackle for loss as well. So they had 5 tackles for loss in this game. So they had a good defensive game going. And, in a sense, you're going to see more tackles for loss against Miami when they do so many dump-off passes and so many passes even behind the line of scrimmage, that happens, that they'll end up getting caught behind the line of scrimmage as well, even after they catch a pass. All right. That is a look at that game. Buffalo got another victory, but it was a hard fought, but they ended up pulling it out. All right, let's look at the games coming up this week, the rest of the games. And we'll start with the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Right now, the Houston Texans lead this series 31 games to 15. This is another 1 o'clock game. The Jaguars are favored by only 1.5 points. Now, Jaguars are 1-1 going into this game. They should have been 2-0, but they just gave the game away to Cincinnati last week. So we'll see how they do this week. Now, looking at the top 10 here for this team. In rushing yards, Travis Etienne, number 4 all-time for the Jaguars in rushing yards. Fred Taylor's by far the number 1 with well over 11,000 yards. But James Stewart's number 3 with 2,951 yards. Travis Etienne only needs 47 yards in this game to move into 3rd all-time for the Jacksonville Jaguars in rushing yards. And looking at rushing TDs, Maurice Jones-Drew leads in this category with 68 rushing TDs, but right now Stacey Mack is 4th with 19 and Travis Etienne has 18, so he's in 5th. He needs 1 to tie Mack, 2 to move into 4th all by himself. And then down in the bottom of the top 10, Mark Brunell is number 9 all time, tied with Trevor Lawrence. They're both tied with 9 at 9th with 14 touchdowns. So Trevor Lawrence needs 1 touchdown. He'll move into 9th all by himself, passing Mark Brunell in that category. Another category we're looking at is Josh Hines-Allen as he tries to become the all-time leader in sacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He already number 1 in tackles for loss. He only needs 2 sacks to tie Tony Bracken's for number 1 all-time and 3, or actually 2.5, to pass him to become the number 1 sack leader for the Jaguars. Now, in this same category, you have 2 more active players here. In fact, they flip-flopped last week. Dwayne Moot was number 9. Trayvon Walker was 10th, but they flip-flopped. Smoot, I don't think he even played, but if he did, I can't remember now. If he did, he didn't get a sack or even was credited with any sacks. But Trayvon Walker did have a sack, so now he leads Smoot. He's number 9 all-time, Walker is, with 25 sacks, and Smoot has 24.5. Next up for both of them, which would be a great game if Trayvon Walker was to get there this game, but it's Paul Spicer. He's number 8 all-time, played in the most of the 2000 to 2008. He had 28.5 sacks, so Trayvon Walker needs 3.5 to catch him, 4 to passing. I'd love to see him do it in this game. So those are some of the key stats. As far as injuries go for the Jaguars, there's no key injuries there, so they look pretty good in that category. Now, looking at the Houston Texans, they're 0-2. And again, they've had some tough games against good teams, quality teams. So sometimes the 0-2 record can be deceiving, but they are 0-2 right now. Looking at some numbers for them, for the Houston Texans, Nico Collins is 7th all-time in receiving receptions with 224. He needs 5 to pass Brandon Cooks, who's in 6th right now. So that's the target. 5 receptions for him, and he can do it, which I think is very possible if the Jaguars treat him the way they treated Jamar Chase, who had 14 receptions on 16 targets. I think Nico Collins could easily pass Brandon Cooks. We'll see. Another category for the Houston Texans is in interceptions. Derek Stingley right now has 11 interceptions, which is 5th all-time for the Houston Texans. Andre Hall is in 4th with 12. So he needs 1 interception to tie him, 2 to pass him to move into 4th place. They also have no key injuries right now. Now, looking at the fantasy outlooks for this game, looking at C.J. Stroud, as far as whether you would want to start C.J. Stroud or Trevor Lawrence, actually, but starting with C.J. Stroud, I don't think I would right now. He's had his tough seasons. Right now, he's averaging less than 200 yards a game, and he's, basically every touchdown he's throwing interception as well. So, he's not somebody I want to take a chance on. That he does get Kirk back, and of course Nico Collins, but right now their offensive line is just making it hard for Stroud. He's been getting sacked a lot of pressure. So I would hesitate to want to play him. Now, Trevor Lawrence, a little bit better maybe. He's got a 4-3 touchdown to interception ratio, so too many interceptions still, but now you really have to factor in last week. One of those was given to the defense by Brian Thomas and even the week prior, they were just pop-ups where the receivers were not catching the ball. I think the Jaguars lead the NFL or up at the top of this list in drops by the receivers so far this season. Now, he does go against a pretty good defense, though they have given up a lot of TDs, but they do have a good defense. This is what's been keeping Houston in the game. So Trevor Lawrence, we'll see how it goes against the Houston Texans. And if they run the ball more, which I kind of expect Jaguars to do, then Trevor Lawrence is also a quarterback I might hesitate on wanting to play. Now, looking at the wide receivers for this game, this is another question mark. Travis Hunter has been picking it up every game. He's playing more and more. So it's a possibility that he could be a flex player for you. I would want to wait personally until I see it. The other reason you might think about Travis Hunter is because Brian Thomas is having issues. And talking to the media, they're not claiming anything. I mean, they threw out their wrist injury, but that's just basically bogus. No injury report, no bandaging of the wrist, nothing. He just has been honestly looking like he's scared to get hit. So if he does that in this game, we'll see what the team decides to do. If they pull him from the game even, which would then increase, obviously, Travis Hunter's chances of having a better game as far as receiving goes. So for me, even though Brian Thomas is probably somebody you picked in the first or second round of your draft, if you have him, I'm not sure I want to start him until he really proves that he's willing to catch. He's had 5 catches on 19 targets. They trying to get him the ball, but he is dropping them, including last week, a critical drop at the 1-yard line, Houston's 1-yard line, which would have put the game away. So I don't think I want to start either of these wide receivers. Now, looking at the running backs, this is a little bit different here, where I definitely would probably start Etienne. He's had a good game, 2 good games really, and he should have had an even better game. I don't know why the Jaguars last week had the lead the entire game, and yet they threw the ball 42 times and only ran it 27. I think this week we're going to see a flip-flop, and I think they'll try to run that ball and not and I think this could have been on Lawrence. Get out of the play that was called. There was times I think the coach intimated that they had a running play, and for whatever reason, Lawrence checked out of that to a pass. I don't think that happens as much in this game. So I do expect Travis Etienne to have a good game. He's already had 245 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown through 2 games. So he could have a good game. Now, Houston does have a very good front 7, but I still think they're going to try it. Tootin is another, maybe you want to try him as a flex. He's somebody that we fully expect that the Jaguars do, that he'll ultimately overtake Etienne, but I don't think it'll be this early in the season. Now for Houston, you do have Nick Chubb, and actually hasn't been playing that bad. He could have a decent game. I don't know that the Jaguars' defensive line is that tough. I mean, they're trying to play tough, but I don't think they're that great against the run. So he could have a decent game, and it could be a way to help out Stroud. So Nick Chubb could be a sneaky play if you're looking for a running back. Now, looking at the tight ends, if you're flexing them and you're putting in one each week, Dalton Schultz could have a decent game. He's had 9 targets, 6 catches in 2 games, and he could very possibly have a decent game against the Jaguars. I don't know that I'd want to start him, but maybe. Now, Strange for the Jaguars is definitely a tight end you might consider. I think, again, this is kind of based on the fact that if Thomas is just not playing well, that they maybe throw the ball in different places, and Strange could definitely be the guy. He's been a very good player for them, and he's on the field the entire game because he's also a good blocker. So he could have the opportunity for some receptions in this game. All right, so that's a look at that game. Now let's move on to game number 2, Green Bay at Cleveland Browns. Green Bay leads this series 14 games to 7. Packers are favored by 7.5 in this game. It's in Cleveland, so that's one favor for Cleveland. And Cleveland has played teams tough, but we'll see. Played Cincinnati pretty tough in the first game of the week, right down to the wire there. But Cleveland right now is 0-2. They have nobody really in top 10 numbers to look at. They don't have any injuries that are key injuries at this point in time. So we'll move on to Green Bay. They're 2-0. For them, top 10 numbers for them. Right now, in passing TDs, Jordan Love is 7th all-time. Number 6 is Arnie Herber, who has 66. He played from 1930 to 1940, so quite a while back. But Jordan Love needs 2 touchdowns to catch him, 3 to move into 6th all-time by himself. Another number we're looking at is Rashawn Gary in the tackles for loss category on defense. He's got 41 tackles for loss. Preston Smith, I should say, who was with the team last year, has 42. So Rashawn Gary needs 1 tackle for loss to tie, 2 to move into 9th place all time in that category. Green Bay as well has no key injuries. So let's take a look at this game. And I will, since I forgot to say it, but I do think I'm picking the Houston. I should back up. I'm picking the Jaguars to beat Houston in that game. Now, looking at this game, looking at the numbers here, as far as the quarterbacks go, do you want to start either quarterback here? Well, definitely the possibility of starting Jones. I think he's a good option, though. Like I said, Cleveland's had a pretty good defense. But let me get to that game real quick here. But Jordan Love, I'm sorry. Jordan Love's definitely somebody to think about playing. He's got 2 touchdowns already, and he's willing to rack up the yards when he has the opportunities. So he could be somebody that you might want to start. Though, like I said, Cleveland has played pretty good defense. But with all the quarterbacks hurt, he's definitely a good option. Now, you're not going to start Flacco for Cleveland, so I wouldn't start him at all. The Packers defense, as good as Cleveland's is, the Packers are better. Now, looking at wide receivers, well, for Green Bay, I'm not starting any wide receiver probably. They're as bad as Buffalo the way they play, in that you just can't pick a particular one. Now, you can find, if you need a wide receiver and you want to take a chance, Matthew Golden's been dropped by a lot of people because he hasn't had much of an impact so far. And with Jordan Love liking to throw it deep, it's a possibility this could be a breakout game for Matthew Golden. And I would only play him if you really have to find somebody. But otherwise, I don't think I'm playing any wide receiver for Green Bay. Romeo Doubs would be the number 1 if I had to play somebody, even over Matthew Golden. Romeo would probably be the guy I would want to start if I had to start anybody. He's already had 2 touchdown receptions, so he's somebody Jordan Love is looking for anyway. Now, as far as Cleveland, again, the Green Bay defense is so tough. I just don't know that I want to start anybody for Cleveland on offense, period. even though they're going to be playing from behind. So I guess if I had to start anybody, I think I would start Jerry Jeudy for sure. He'd be the only one for Cleveland as far as wide receivers go. And he has been seeing the most targets. He had 8 targets last week on 4 catches. So he would be the only wide receiver I'd think about starting. So the wide receiver situation in this game is pretty weak. Now, looking at the running backs for Cleveland, Judkins is out there. He's somebody you might think about playing. They put him right in with no practice or anything really last week. He had 10 carries, I believe it was last week. So I don't think they're shy about getting Quinshon Judkins into the game. And he even had some receptions as well. So I think they're going to get him out there, and he'll be their number 1 running back right off the bat as fast as they can get him to play, get him caught up on the playbook and so forth, and he'll just have him running because he's definitely better than either of the other running backs that they had. Now, looking at for Green Bay, Josh Jacobs would be the guy, but right now he's been a little banged up, so he'd be a question mark for me. But he's been definitely their only running back for the most part. So, but against Cleveland's only given up just over 2 yards a carry. So you probably have to play Josh Jacobs. He is questionable going into this game, so you'll have to watch that. But again, the running backs, could be a very defensive game this weekend, which is really going to hurt as far as offensive stats go. Now, when it comes to the tight ends, this is where I would want to start a Cleveland player. And they do have Njoku, and this is the only fact that hurts their situation, but they do have the rookie Harold Fannin. He has really been looking good this season. He had 5 catches on 5 targets for 48 yards last week. And against the Green Bay defense, it's not that great against the tight end. Now, their other tight end who also had 5 targets but only had 4 catches for 40 yards. So this is a little bit of the problem with this team is David Njoku is who I'm talking about here, but they split the targets with their 2 tight ends. But I will say that if I had to pick between the 2, I'm definitely picking Harold Fannin. I think he has a little bit more of the big play possibility. And but either way, I do feel like Flacco is looking for the tight ends to go to them. All right, in this game, I definitely am picking the Green Bay Packers to win this, and I do think they'll probably even cover the 7.5 points. As good as Cleveland's defense is, their offense just isn't going to cut it, and I think Flacco is going to be eating a lot of dirt this week. All right, next game, New Orleans Saints at the Seattle Seahawks. The Saints lead this series 10-8. Now, this is our first 4 o'clock game. Now, Seahawks are also favored by 7.5 points against the Saints. It is in Seattle, so it's a little bit of travel for the Saints. Now, Seattle is 1-1 going into this game. Looking at the top 10 for this game, in sacks, this is the only category for them. Right now, Jaron Reed is 11th, trying to break into the top 10. Frank Clark is 10th with 35 sacks. Jaron Reed has 34.5, so only needs half a sack to tie Frank Clark, 1 to move into 10th all by himself. Jacob Green, who played in the 80s, had 115.5 sacks to lead the Seattle Seahawks. Now, key injuries for them is Zach Charbonnet. He has not practiced all week, and he's really looking doubtful to play. This is going to be a big boom if you have Kenneth Walker III. All right, for the New Orleans Saints, they're 0-2. They've tried to play, and they've hung in there in games, but they still are 0-2. Looking at them, again, we're always going to be looking at Alvin Kamara as he continues to move up the charts in both categories. Nothing in rushing this time, but in receiving, He's sixth all-time in receiving for the New Orleans Saints with 4,795 yards. He needs 81 yards to pass Danny Abramovitz for fifth place all-time in receiving yards for the New Orleans Saints. Last week, he passed Jimmy Graham, and next up for him is Danny Abramovitz. Now, looking at Alvin Kamara in receptions, but on the NFL spectrum, entire NFL, as far as running backs go, he's eighth all-time in receptions, and he's got three players in front of him that he could catch this week. Marcus Allen's fourth all-time with 587, Tiki Barber's fifth with 586 receptions, and Ronnie Harmon's sixth with 582. Alvin Kamara has 581. He passed Keith Byers last week. So he can, if he gets 7 receptions, he passes all 3 of them. And it's very possible for him to do that. But we'll see. I believe he might have even had 6 last week. So whatever he had, but he'll definitely have a chance to move as high as 4th place all time in the NFL, history of the NFL. So he's been an incredible player for the New Orleans Saints. Now looking at him again in receiving yards on an NFL category, he is 10th all time, moved into that spot. Next up for him is Darren Sproles, who's 9th with 4,840 yards. So he only needs 56 yards in this game coming up to pass Darren Sproles to move into 9th. He's also, if he had even a little bit bigger game and had 65 yards, he would pass Herschel Walker for 8th all time. So he's looking at a couple of players in this game that he could pass and move into even 8th place all time in the NFL. Marshall Faulk is first with 6,875 yards. So honestly, he's not that, I don't know if he'll ever catch Marshall Faulk, but he's not that far behind him. A few seasons we're talking about. One more category for, well, 2 more actually for Alvin Kamara, and that's in receiving touchdowns. Right now, Alvin Kamara for the New Orleans Saints is 9th all-time in receiving touchdowns with 25. Next up for him is Henry Childs, who played in the 70s, late 70s, with 27. So he needs 2 touchdowns to tie, 3 to move into 8th all-time by himself. Now, again, looking at the NFL as a whole in receiving touchdowns by running backs, Alvin Kamara is trying to break into the top 10 in this category as well. He's got 25, like I said. Joe Morrison's 10th right now. He played from 1959 to 72. He has 27 touchdown receptions. So that's the next target for Alvin Kamara to break into the top 10. It's interesting, the players on for New Orleans. Again, looking at one more. Cameron Jordan in the sacks department is tied for number 1 all time for the New Orleans Saints with 123. He just needs a half a sack to move into first place all by himself. He's tied with Ricky Jackson, who played in the 80s and early 90s. They both have 123 sacks. So that's a look at the Saints. They have no real key injuries. Now looking at this game and who you might want to start as far as fantasy goes, well, the Saints can be scored on. Sam Darnold for Seattle has had an okay game, but the Saints are giving up a lot of points right now. They're top 10 as far as giving up points. So Sam Darnold, if you're looking for a quarterback, could definitely be somebody you might pop in there. I think he'll have a good game against the Saints. Now, Rattler, on the other hand, he actually played quite well last week, but is that good enough for somebody you want to start? The Seahawks defense is decent, not great. I think I'd only start Spencer Rattler if you're really hurting for a quarterback. But he does run around a little bit, so he can get you some yards that way as well. But still, I don't think I necessarily want to start him. Now, looking at wide receivers for the 2 teams, let me get to, obviously, you're going to start Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seattle Seahawks against New Orleans. You're going to start him every game if you can. He's already had back-to-back 100-yard games, despite Sam Darnold not getting off to a really hot start himself. So he's the guy you want to start for sure. Looking at other wide receivers in this game, I don't know that Cooper Kupp had a good game, so he's somebody you might think about starting. And if you feel like maybe he is back, because if he is back, he's definitely going to catch receptions, and he seems to be able to rack up a decent amount of yardage. So he might be a flex play for you, depending on how deep your league is. But other than that, that's all for Seattle. For the Saints, I don't think I want to start anybody. They're just not throwing the ball enough, and it's so many passes are little dump off passes, so nobody's getting many yards. Shaheed is one running wide receiver, but I just, like I said, I don't think even Olave is somebody I necessarily want to start unless I have to. Looking at the running backs, well, I'm definitely going to start Kenneth Walker against New Orleans. With Zach Charbonnet out, Kenneth Walker should have a big game. He had a really good game last week, despite being out touched by Zach Charbonnet as far as runs go. But Charbonnet had 15 carries for 10 yards. Kenneth Walker had over 100 yards last week, and had some receptions as well. But like I said, with Charbonnet out, Kenneth Walker is a definite start. Alvin Kamara, I would start as well, especially because usually I'm always talking PPR here, and with all the receptions he gets, he just racks up a lot of fantasy points. It's nothing flashy, but he keeps doing it. He had over 100 total yards last week. So he's somebody I'm going to start. Those are two running backs, definitely going to start both of them. Now, looking at the tight ends, definitely going to start Juwan Johnson. He came from nowhere, but he has already got 13 catches on 22 targets. So the Rattler's definitely targeting Johnson. He had a drop, but then he also last week had a spectacular catch. So he's catching. I mean, they're throwing the ball. He's definitely somebody I'm going to start. There's just no question about it. I'm going to have him in the game if I have the opportunity. Now for Seattle, A.J. Barner, I wouldn't bother. He's only been targeted 6 times. I think Darnold tends to go down the field a little bit more, and so I wouldn't mess with that. Now, looking at this game, I definitely think Seattle will win this game and cover the spread as well. It's just for the Saints traveling to Seattle, and Seattle has a pretty decent team, so I'm going to pick them. Next game, Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. Denver leads this series 73 games to 57 and 1 tie. Now, the Chargers are favored by 2.5 in this game, and it is a home game for the Chargers, so I'm a little surprised that they're not even favored maybe by a little bit more than that. Chargers are 2-0 and have played quite well. You know, they beat Kansas City the first week, but they've been playing well. Now, top 10 for them. The only category is watching Cameron Dicker and Keenan Allen as they battle for number 10 all time and trying to pass Dennis Partee for number 9 in scoring. Partee has 380 points, Allen has 376, and Cameron Dicker has 374. So I think both of them will push Dennis Partee out of the top 10, and they'll move in. I mean, Keenan Allen has been getting the touchdown receptions. He's been a key player for that team. Amazingly, that they were able to pick him up this season and have him back on the team. He used to be on the team in the past as well. But anyway, I think both of them will move up. They don't have any. The Chargers have no key injuries right now. Denver Broncos are 1-1. And again, Sean Payton, as far as trying to move up this list, is tied for 8th all-time in coaching wins with 19. Not that many, but he needs a win here to catch Lou Saban to move into 7th all-time with 20 wins. That's his next target. Other top 10s for the Denver Broncos. Cortland Sutton, who had a terrible game last week, so maybe a bounce-back game here. He's 10th all time in receiving yards with 5,407. He just needs 44 yards to move into ninth, passing Haven Moses, who played in the 70s, early 80s, to move into ninth. So he should be able to do that. I thought he didn't need that many yards last week. He got, I think, 6 or 7 yards. It was a terrible game for Sutton. So I expect a bounce back game here. All right, looking at tackles for loss for Denver Broncos. Nick Bonito is tied for 10th all time in tackles for loss with Champ Bailey. They both have 32. He just needs one tackle for loss to move to ninth, tie for ninth with Bradley Chubb. 2 would put him in a tie for 8th with Shelby Harris. So 2 or 3, and he's into 8th place all by himself or tied for it. Those are the key there. Now, injuries for the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they expected a lot more out of Evan Ingram, tight end for Broncos. He hasn't practiced this week, so he may not play. And even he just hasn't been that impressive. So I don't know what's going on with his situation. But he's somebody, if you have him in your roster, you probably want to take him out for either reason, whether he is not going to play or he just hasn't played that well anyway. All right. So looking at this game, quarterbacks, definitely going to start Justin Herbert against Denver. I know Denver has a good defense, but Herbert's been playing so well this year. They've passed the ball a lot more than I expected, and he's just been playing quite well. When he's in trouble, he's been able to scramble out of it, so he's been picking up some yards on the ground as well. So I'm going to start Justin Herbert, even though it is Denver. Now for Denver Knicks, he's been fairly solid, but his problem is he has thrown 3 interceptions already, and the Chargers defense is one of the better ones. So I'm not sure I want to start Knicks in this game against the Chargers. So I probably would, if I don't have to, I wouldn't. Looking at the wide receivers in this game, wrong. Looking at Troy Franklin for Denver, this is a surprise. He's actually been playing better, or at least as good as Sutton, but he's been targeted 15 times already in this season. So he's the number 2 guy, but he's honestly been playing like he could be better. And if Sutton's receiving all the coverage, Troy Franklin could definitely be a player if you're looking for a receiver to put into the game. He's up in the top 10 as far as fantasy points go right now with receivers. So he's a sneaky play that could really pan out for you if you want to put him into the game. All right. Other than that, I don't know that I want to start Sutton. Now for the Chargers, though, their problem is they have 3 good receivers. And which one of them do you start? McConkey? I don't know. I'm a little leery. He's the number 1 guy, and you probably picked him as a player you're going to start every game. But it's been a little iffy. He hasn't done any better than the other ones. Allen has been catching some key passes. He seems to be the guy that Herbert likes to go to in important situations, and he has had some touchdown receptions. And then Johnson. So all 3 of them, and it's like, who do you pick? And it makes it very difficult to decide which receiver I would want to go with. I think McConkey is a little bit banged up already, but I'm not sure that I want to start any of them, even also considering it is against Denver. So they do have a good defense, though you wouldn't have quite known it last week. Now, looking at the running backs in this game, who do I want to start if I want to start any of them? It's been all of a sudden for the Chargers, Hampton and Najee Harris. If this is going to go into a split backfield, Hampton was the guy, and then Najee Harris finally has come He was absent the entire offseason and during practice and so forth. But I'm not sure now that either one is startable because we just don't know what the split's going to be like. As Harris seems to be increasing his end of it and taking away from Hampton. So, and they're also going up against the Denver defense. So I don't think I want to start either running back for that team. And then, like I said, I wouldn't start Hampton or Najee Harris. Now, J.K. Dobbins is definitely showing himself to be the guy. He is going up against the Chargers, like I said, who have one of the best defenses right now. But if you're going to start any running back in this game, it's probably going to be Dobbins. Harvey, who was the rookie that everybody was looking at, has just not been able to do anything to get into the game. Dobbins has been playing quite well. I wouldn't get rid of Harvey or anything because at some point Dobbins may get hurt. He has had that tendency. But Dobbins is the only running back in this game that I would start. All right, let's look at the tight ends here for this game. Like I said, Ingram, you're not going to start for the Chargers. Tyler Conklin would be the tight end to start, but there's not a tight end that I want to start in this game. There's just nobody that is worth the effort. Like I said, Evan Ingram, he may not even play, and even if he did, I just don't trust it. So no tight ends here for this game. Now, in this game, I do think the Chargers will beat the Denver Broncos. It could be a close game because the defenses are so good, but I just think you have the veteran quarterback in Herbert versus Nix, and I think the defense for the Chargers will make it difficult for Bo Nix in this game. And so I picked the Chargers to win. Next game, Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers lead this series 36 games to 31. This is another 4 o'clock game. For 49ers, they're 2-0 right now. And the numbers we want to look at them, NFL-wise, running backs, top 10 here. In the NFL, Christian McCaffrey's third all-time in receiving touchdowns by running backs. Number 2 is Darren Sproles with 32. So he needs 2 to tie, 3 to pass him. Probably won't get the 3, but maybe the 2. Otherwise, it might take another week or so. Marshall Faulk is number 1 all-time in receiving touchdowns by running backs with 36. So Christian McCaffrey is moving up this list in that category. Now, another top 10 for the 49ers, and that is tackles for loss. Nick Bosa, number 2 all-time in tackles for loss behind Bryant Young, who has 93 tackles for loss. Bosa has 91. He needs 2 to tie, 3 to move into first place. And Nick Bosa as well in sacks. Right now, he's 5th all-time for the 49ers with 64.5. Charles Haley is 4th, who played in the late 80s and the 90s. He had 66.5 sacks to Nick Bosa's 64.5. So 2 sacks would tie him, 2.5 would put him into 4th all-time. Cedric Hardman, who played in the 70s, has 108 sacks for San Francisco. Now for them, they do have some injury situation here. Jawan Jennings, the wide receiver, has ankle and shoulder issues. He's been absent from practice this week. Doesn't mean he won't play, but he's definitely questionable. And if you have other options, you might consider it, especially since it is a 4 o'clock game, so that you might want to start somebody who might play at 1 o'clock or whatever. Now, Brock Purdy also wasn't even expected to play, but now has become a game-time decision. He's got toe and shoulder issues. His toe is what put him out initially, so we'll see. We'll have to watch it to see what happens there. Now, looking at the Arizona Cardinals, they're 2-0 as well, so this is a game of 2 teams who are undefeated. We'll see who walks away and still remains undefeated. In this game, top 10 quarterback Kyler Murray is 8th all-time in interceptions thrown. He's for the Arizona Cardinals. He's got 58. Kurt Warner's 7th with 59. 1 interception he'll tie him. 2, he will move into 7th all-time as far as interceptions go. Looking in another top 10, and that's the running back, James Conner. He's 4th all-time in rushing. I don't think he'll catch Jim Otis, who played in the 70s, who's in 3rd. He would need a big game, 123 yards to pass Jim Otis. So not that it's impossible, but looking at his last game, it just wasn't there. So we'll see what happens with that. And the last one is we're continuing to watch Calais Campbell, who's already the active leader in tackles for loss for the Arizona Cardinals with 109, but he's 3rd all-time in the NFL with 189. So he's working his way up toward J.J. Watt for 2nd all-time in the NFL as far as tackles for loss. All right, they have no key injuries. Now, looking at the fantasy players from that aspect for the Cardinals and the 49ers, I'm not going to start a quarterback, whether it's Purdy or Jones. I'm not starting the quarterback for the 49ers. Now, if you did hear that Purdy's not playing, Mac Jones could be a possible replacement. He did have a decent game against the Saints, actually pretty good game. But I wouldn't trust Mac Jones. He's the backup. And unless you have to, backups, I'm just not comfortable with that necessarily. Now, Kyler Murray, do you want to play him? He's throwing 3-to-1 ratio on TDs to interceptions, but he hasn't thrown for more than 220 yards yet this season. And he has run around a little bit more, but the San Francisco 49ers defense, not as great as it used to be, but it's not bad. I would play Kyler Murray, I guess, if you felt like you didn't have a better option, but there's probably some other quarterbacks that you might want to start instead of him. He's so up and down. He could have a really unbelievable game. It's hard to know. All right. Looking at the wide receivers in this game for Arizona, as much as you might have been hoping that Marvin Harrison Jr. would pan out, so far it hasn't really been working. So I don't think that, I want to start him. He's been very inconsistent. And looking at the different or listening to different things and watching different things, it just doesn't seem like Harrison and Murray have a connection. There's been times when it looks like Harrison's open and he's just not getting the ball. So I just don't know that he's somebody that you want to start unless they can figure out a way to get him the ball more consistently. I don't think there's a receiver I want to start for Arizona. Now for San Francisco, Jennings being out makes Ricky Pearsall maybe a better option. He did finish 3rd in targets, but that was behind Jennings. So if Jennings doesn't play, he could be the leading wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey's been getting as many targets as any receiver. But Ricky Pearsall would be a play if Jennings is out. So those are the receivers in this game that you might be interested in. Looking at the running backs, well, you're definitely going to start Christian McCaffrey. He's been the offense basically for the 49ers for the most part, running, receiving. So you're going to start him no matter who they're playing against. Now, for Arizona, you have Connor, and right now he is the guy, but we'll have to see how the split goes for him. But I would consider James Conner, because he has been the most consistent running back for Arizona, and he does catch some passes out of the backfield. So I think I would start him, not as my main guy, but as a backup, or maybe if you have to, as a flex. So those are your running backs. Now, looking at the tight ends, obviously, you're going to start McBride. He's just the guy, so going to start him. And for San Francisco, you're not going to start until Kittle gets back. You're not going to really look at the tight ends for San Francisco. But Trey McBride, you want to start. He's already been targeted 16 times, and I think he could even be targeted more. And he's had 12 catches on 16 targets, so he looks good. So those are your players from that game. I'm picking the Arizona Cardinals actually to win this game. I think it'll be a very tough game. It's a big game. I just don't know, honestly, how good the 49ers are, and their quarterback situation is so iffy. I think there's a possibility you can get Mac Jones into throwing interceptions and making mistakes. So I'm going to pick this as an upset and have the Cardinals beat the 49ers. All right, next game up, Dallas Cowboys at the Chicago Bears. Dallas Cowboys lead this series 16 games to 12. The Cowboys, even though it's in Chicago, are favored by 1.5. Now, the Chicago Bears are 0-2. Top 10 for them, -1, and that's in the quarterback sacks. This is only Caleb Williams' second year, but he is tied for number 9 in sacks with 74. He just needs one more to move into 9th all by himself, which I'm sure he'll do. And so category you don't like. Jay Cutler's number 1 with 251. So we'll give Caleb Williams a couple years to get to that. Now, no key injuries for the Chicago Bears. Now, Dallas Cowboys, top 10. Dak Prescott, tied for number 2 all-time in sacks as well. Now, of course, he's had more years than Caleb Williams has. But he's got 259 times he's been sacked. He's tied with Troy Aikman in that number. He passed Don Meredith last week to move into tie for second with Troy Aikman. So one more, he passes him. Next up, which I don't think he'll get this year, you wouldn't expect, but probably next year he'll pass Roger Staubach, who has 313 sacks to move into first place. But right now he's second with Troy Aikman, but 1 sack, and he'll be second all by himself. And that is it for top 10s for those two teams. No key injuries for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, looking at the quarterback situation here, well, Dak Prescott, you want to start. He threw crazy game. If you watched it, Russell Wilson threw 450 yards passing, and Dak Prescott, had 361. Passing the ball was everywhere that game. Dak Prescott probably put the ball up again. In this game, the Bears' defense isn't that great at all against quarterbacks, so I fully expect to see the ball up in the air again in this game. So Dak Prescott, I would want to start. Now, Caleb Williams is the other quarterback, and you probably want to start him as well because, like I said, Russell Wilson didn't look too good in his first game, but then he had 450 against Dallas. So I fully expect Caleb Williams to be able to put the ball up as well, and he's also got that running element as well. So Caleb Williams, you're going to want to start both these quarterbacks, I believe. Now, as far as the wide receivers, definitely starting CeeDee Lamb against Chicago. I mean, if Prescott's going to put up those types of yards, Lamb's going to look good. He's already topped 100 yards in both games, so he's definitely somebody I'm starting. And for Chicago, going to start Rome Odunze for sure as well. Dallas is just giving up so many yards. So those two wide receivers for sure starting. Now, a sneaky one you might be able to pick up if off the waiver wire, even still, is not Olamide Zaccheaus, the wide receiver for Chicago. He's been pretty consistent, and like I said, I think there are going to be a lot of yards going around here, and Zaccheaus could be a sneaky pick for you. Another one that you were going to want to start, so there's a lot of starters here. George Pickens is your flex guy, or maybe your second or third wide receiver, depending on how many you have. But Pickens had a good game last week, touchdown, was into the game pretty well, and I think he's just going to continue to improve his play for Dallas Cowboys. But so you've got 4 good wide receivers there to pick from. Now, looking at the running backs in this game, the surprise, honestly, is Javonte Williams for Dallas. He's been really playing quite well for Dallas. So you're going to want to start him. I think I'd have him in my lineup. They're definitely key. The Cowboys are using him. He's clearly the number 1 running back for the Dallas Cowboys now, and he's been actually catching passes out of the backfield as well. So I'm going to start Javonte Williams. Now, DeAndre Swift hasn't played quite as well, but against the Cowboys, he's somebody you might think about playing. Now, the problem with him, he is a little bit questionable, but I don't think it should be a problem. I think he'll play. So I'm going to start both running backs probably if you have that, have them on your team or you're looking at them. Now, as far as tight ends go, Jake Ferguson is somebody you probably want to start, possibly. He's actually, last week, he was targeted 12 times. So I think between, as much as Prescott's throwing the ball, he's getting it spread around between Lamb, Pickens, and Ferguson as the tight ends. Probably a tight end you want to look at. Now, looking at the Bears, I don't know that you want to start anybody. Cole Kmet, but I wouldn't start any of these guys, any of the tight ends for Chicago at this point in time. It's not a clear field as far as who's going to be the guy. So I'm not going to start any of them. All right. I am picking Dallas Cowboys to win this game against the Chicago Bears, even though it is in Chicago and it should be a high-scoring game. But I just think they'll be able to pull it out. And again, I'm always favoring the quarterback who's had some experience over the one who doesn't. So I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys here. Next game up, Kansas City Chiefs at the New York Giants. The Giants lead this series 11 games to 4. This is the Sunday night game. The Chiefs are favored by 5.5. The Giants are 0-2 right now. And looking at top 10 here, well, in another negative category, we've been pretty big in the sack category by quarterbacks, but this is on the NFL level. Russell Wilson's been sacked 565 times. He's tied with Tom Brady for 3rd in that category in the NFL history. Next up for him is Fran Tarkenton, who's 2nd with 570 sacks. So he needs 5 sacks. If he's sacked 5 times, he ties Fran Tarkenton for 2nd. Right now, the only 2 people for Russell Wilson to catch are Fran Tarkenton and Aaron Rodgers, who has 578. So whether he can catch him or not, we'll be able to watch that all year long. Another top 10, Dexter Lawrence right now is 10th all time for the New York Giants as far as tackles for loss with 36. Keith Hamilton is 9th with 37. So he needs 1 to tie, 2 to pass him. The Giants don't have any key injuries. Anybody that's going to be out. Kansas City is also 0-2. Now they have a few things here. Again, we're looking at the sack department. Patrick Mahomes is 4th all time in being sacked with 188 sacks. He's got 2 players he's looking at catching possibly this week, and that's Bill Kenny, who's 2nd all time with 195, and Alex Smith, who is 3rd all time with 192. I don't think he'll catch Bill Kenny. At least Patrick Mahomes wishes he doesn't, but he needs 4 to tie Alex Smith, 5 to pass him. He would need 7 to tie Bill Kenny. Be sacked 7 times. That's a lot. Another top 10 is Kareem Hunt is 9th all time in rushing TDs with 22. Next up for him is Mike Garrett, who played in the late 60s. He's 8th all time with 24 touchdowns rushing. Priest Holmes, number 1 with 76 rushing touchdowns. So those are top players there. Now for Kansas City, Xavier Worthy might be back in this game. He's been limited in practice. He has missed a game. He could be back. So we'll have to see whether he does make it back or not. Now, as far as players you want to start, with the quarterback situation the way it is with some of the starters out, Patrick Mahomes is probably somebody you want to start, especially seeing how many yards the Giants gave up last week to Prescott. But he hasn't played well, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the only reason he's a fantasy player at all is his running that he's done. So he had a rushing touchdown last week. But Patrick Mahomes, you probably want to start in this game. Russell Wilson, based on what he did last week, he could have a decent game. Kansas City's defense is average, and Herbert, though he is a much better quarterback for the Chargers, but he passed for over 300 yards, so it's very possible Russell Wilson could have a pretty decent game. So both those quarterbacks might be somebody you want to start. Now, looking at the wide receivers, you're obviously starting Malik Neighbors for the Giants. You're going to start him in every game. He had 167 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Now, that was on 450 yards that they threw, but he gets targets left and right. He's the guy that Wilson's looking at first almost every single time. And the Chiefs' secondary is not that good. So look for another good game by Malik Neighbors. So you're definitely going to start him. Now, for one more for the Giants would be Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a little banged up, but he had a career-high game last week of 142 yards. And again, like I said, the Chiefs' secondary is not that good. The only problem is you want to watch. Robinson has a foot injury, and he's been limited in practice. But, if he's limited, he probably will get in there and play come Sunday night. But you want to check it for sure because it is a night game. You don't want to get stuck having to find a fantasy player that late. So those are 2 wide receivers for the Giants. Now, for Kansas City, with all the players out last week, Hollywood Brown needed to step up. And he's been targeted 21 times, but he just isn't making the receptions. It hasn't looked that great at all. But if you're going to start one, he might be the guy. I'm not sure I want to start Xavier Worthy because he's just coming back. You're going to have to check the waiver wire anyway to see if he's going to play. So I don't think I wouldn't want to start him. I don't think I'd start him. Despite the fact that the Giants defense looks like it's susceptible to the pass. Now, looking at the running backs for these 2 teams, I'm not starting a Kansas City running back. Isaiah Pacheco could have a decent game, but he's only looked okay. The defense for the Giants isn't that great against the run, but Pacheco, maybe he does have a game this week, but he hasn't had one so far that thrills me, so I don't think I'm starting him or Hunt for Kansas City. I just don't see it. Now for the Giants, they're having their own issues about who to start, and who not to start. So until it's a clearer picture, I don't think I'm going to start a running back for the Giants either. Now, looking at the tight ends in this game, Kelsey is a possible start. He's been kind of iffy, though. He's been targeted 10 times in 2 games, so that's not too bad. He did have a drop. He did have a decent catch, though. Kind of picked it up off the ground just before it hit the ground, but then he had a drop. And he just doesn't seem to have much left in him, but he's only got 6 catches on 10 targets, and only 108 yards. So I guess if you want to play him against the Giants secondary that's not that great, he might be an option for you. But kind of an iffy option, to be honest with you. Now for the Giants, you got tight end Theo Johnson, but he's not worth starting. So really, other than the wide receivers and possibly the quarterback, that's about it for the Giants. All right, in this game, picking Kansas City Chiefs, to move off that 0-2 record and rack up a win. This is a game, where one of these two teams is going to finally pick up their first win and the other one won't and move on to 0-3. But I do pick the Chiefs to end up winning this game. Next game, Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens. This is the Monday night game, big game. The Ravens lead this series 6-1, and the Ravens, it's in Baltimore, but the Ravens are favored by 5.5. I'm surprised that the margin that big against the Lions. That's something. The Baltimore Ravens are 1-1. Now looking top 10 for them right now in rushing TDs, Lamar Jackson is third all-time in rushing TDs for the Baltimore Ravens with 34. Next up for him is Ray Rice, who's second with 37. And Jamal Lewis has 45. So Lamar Jackson's moving up top 10 all-time. Actually moving toward number 1 all-time in rushing touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Derrick Henry will push into the top 10 here soon for the Ravens, but he's already in the top 10 in the NFL all-time rushing touchdowns. He's 6th, actually, with 108. Next up for him is Walter Payton with 110. So 2 touchdowns to tie Walter Payton for 5th all-time and 3 to move into 5th all by himself. Emmitt Smith is number 1 with 164 rushing touchdowns. Another top 10 on defense, interceptions. The Baltimore Ravens, Marlon Humphrey has 19 interceptions. That's good enough for 6th. There's 2 players tied for 4th. Dwayne Starks and Rod Woodson both have 20. So 1 interceptions, he'll tie for 4th. 2, he'll move into 4th all by himself with 21. But right now he just needs 1 to tie and move into 4th with that. He's got 19. He needs 1 more to get to 20. Now, tackles for loss. We've been watching Nnamdi Madubuike, who's got 42 tackles for loss, which is a tie for 10th. 1 more, he'll tie C.J. Mosley for 9th with 43. So watch him to get that 1 more tackle for loss to move into 9th. 2 to move into 9th all by himself. Now, key injuries for the Ravens is Isaiah Likely, tight end. He could return from a foot injury. I think it's going to be kind of a game time decision. We'll have to watch and see what happens there. Now, for the Detroit Lions, they're also 1 win, 1 loss. Top 10s for them. And again, another sack category here. Quarterback sacks. Jared Goff has been sacked 123 times for the Detroit Lions. Scott Mitchell's 8th with 124, and Rodney Peete is 7th with 127. So he'll probably catch Scott Mitchell, though I will say he was not sacked last week. He had a good game. Their offensive line played quite well. So he needs 1 to tie Scott Mitchell, 4 to tie Rodney Peete for 7th and 8th spot. So we'll see how that goes. Now, looking at the rushing touchdowns for the running backs here, Barry Sanders, number 1 all-time rushing TDs for the Detroit Lions with 99. Jamar Gibbs right now is 5th. He needs 1 to tie Nick Pietrasante, who played in the early 60s, who has 28 touchdowns. Jamar Gibbs has 27. Right behind him, in 7th, tied for 6th actually, is David Montgomery, who has 26 touchdowns rushing. He's tied with Mel Farr for 6th right now. So he needs 1. Interestingly, he needs 1 to pass Mel Farr, which would also tie him with Jamar Gibbs if Jamar Gibbs doesn't happen to get a touchdown. So they're both looking at passing Nick Pietrasante in 4th place with his 28. So we'll watch and see how that goes. But they've both been getting their touchdowns almost so evenly. It's been interesting to watch how the Lions do the running game. All right, that's it for the top 10 for the Lions. They don't have any key injuries either. Now, looking at the quarterbacks for fantasy purposes, Lamar Jackson definitely starting. Always going to start him. It could be a very high-scoring game. Detroit put up 50-plus points last week. So you're going to start Lamar Jackson. And if you have Jared Goff, you're going to start him. He threw for 334 yards last week and 5 touchdowns. He's going to be playing against a much better defense this week, but if they're going to keep pace with the Ravens, it's a possibility he might have to have a big game again. So probably want to start both those quarterbacks. Now, wide receivers for these two teams. Which wide receivers we want to start? Now, I still don't trust Flowers for Baltimore, though he has looked better. Not that he's bad, but the way the passing game was for the Ravens, it just didn't favor any particular player, it seemed like. But Zay Flowers had another good game, so I would want to start him, especially since the Lions gave up over 100 yards to Rome Odunze last week. Could be another good game for Flowers. So going to start Flowers as a wide receiver for Baltimore against Detroit. Now for Detroit, this is a little bit different. And who we want to start there, I don't know. Jameson Williams would be one option. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously, is another one. But Williams is too much of a boomer bust kind of player right now. So I don't know that I want to start him. And then St. Brown had a good game last week. So week 1 did not have a good game. If you're starting anybody, it's St. Brown. And somebody will be catching these passes for Detroit. So I would start probably him over Jameson Williams. I wouldn't start them both for sure. Looking at the running back situation here, you've got some really good running backs in this game. It'll be fun to watch this aspect of the game. Now, for Detroit against Baltimore, you got David Montgomery and Jamar Gibbs. You're going to start Gibbs. You got to start Gibbs. He had over 100 yards last week. Really good game. And I think he should have another one in this game. And if they want to stay in the game, he definitely has to have a good game. Now, David Montgomery is the other running back. You might want to start him as well, especially if he's your flex option. He still has been playing quite well, and he does get those touchdowns when he gets down there close. So either one of those guys, I'm probably going to have is definitely Gibbs and then Montgomery possibly. Now, Henry, on the other hand, had his worst game, has one of his better games last week 1 when he had well over 160 yards. But last week was one of his worst games ever. 11 carries for 23 yards. Just horrendous. But he should have a good game against Detroit, who's been giving up a lot of yards on the ground. And Swift is nowhere near the running back Derrick Henry is. So I expect to see Henry come back with a really good game. So you're going to start at least Gibbs and Henry and possibly even Montgomery in this game. Now, as far as tight ends go, Sam Laporta, good game week 1, pretty not so good week 2. But I would start him. He's somebody you're going to want to start against Baltimore. So Sam Laporta for Detroit will start. And then for Baltimore, I'm not going to start the tight ends there until, Likely could be back, but Mark Andrews has been horrible. 2 weeks in a row, 1 catch. I don't know, you might have thought it was a fluke week 1, but 2 weeks in a row, I'm not going to start him until I see what's going on there. And if Likely comes back, that could just make even bigger mess of the tight end situation. All right, that's a look at that game. I'm picking the Ravens to win. I don't know that they're going to win by 5.5 to cover that spread. That seems to me a little high. This could be a really good game to watch, but I'm going to pick the Ravens to win. They seem like a really good team. Shouldn't have lost against the Bills in week 1, but despite that, they're a good team. So picking the Ravens to win this game. All right, that is a wrap for the games coming up. Hope you enjoy the games. I'm looking forward to them. Some big games here, some games with 2-0 teams playing each other. And then like you have the Giants-Kansas City game where somebody needs to get a win finally. And then you have some good divisional games as well. All right. So that is a wrap for this episode. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Enjoy your NFL football on Sunday and Monday. And until next time, this is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL.